Karen Dawn. Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Hello. It's so nice to have you.
You've got me sandwiched between some pretty fancy people today, I have to say. I'm honored, and I'm so glad for animals' sake, because that's what we're trying to do, is get them to be part of important conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hold your own with all of these people that we have on the show today. So I'm proud to have you on as well.
I hope so.
You talk about so many different issues. I was thinking when we thought, well, have you on? I almost don't know where to begin. I wonder what you see as some of the greatest challenges and maybe some of the greatest areas of improvement that have been made.
Yeah. It's funny because I was thinking, should I have asked Mark exactly what he wanted me to talk about and know what I should scrub up on, because I'm such a generalist. I keep an eye on what the media is doing with animal issues. So I know something about everything, and any of, whether it be the Elon Musk thing or the rodeo thing, there's going to be somebody who knows a little bit more about each individual thing than I do. But I've got the general picture of what's going on. And I have to say, I was so loving listening to what Jim Avila was talking about with the importance of the 6:30 news, because that's what DawnWatch focuses on. Because even though, other venues are more trendy or whatever, the general news is still talking to an awful lot of people every evening and kind of giving them a hint as to how they should look at things. And I have to say that I've been in this movement since, I think, 1850 or something. But say in the last 20 years, at least the kind of coverage we're getting on the evening news is changing. But there are some areas that aren't changing quite as well as people's attitudes towards animals are changing. And you mentioned rodeos, and I think that's such a great example, in that I was thinking, oh, I think Mark's going to ask me about rodeos. So I Google rodeo videos, and immediately what comes up is all this stuff about who's winning the rodeos. And it's, oops, I needed to put in rodeo cruelty videos. And then all the stuff comes up about there's an organization called Shark, showing animals respect and kindness. And they go behind the scenes at the rodeos, and they show what is happening to the animals before they get released out into the field. And that's the kind of stuff that the more people see of it, the less excited they are going to be about the rodeo coming to town.
Of course.
And that's the sort of stuff that we need people to see more of, not because we need to say, you have to hate rodeos because they're cruel. We have to kind of understand that when people see what's going on, they'll figure that out for themselves.
Yeah, this is interesting. This is a really, it's sort of like evil grows in the dark. If you can shed a little light on it, then people don't need to be lectured. They go, uh-oh, I don't want to be part of that.
It's funny. I think you and I may have met for the first time at the Genesis Awards. My beautiful mentor, Gretchen Weiler, used to put those on, and they were like an animal-friendly Oscars where people like Mark Thompson would announce, and then movie stars would present awards to people who'd done good animal-friendly stuff. And the caption for the Genesis Awards was, "Cruelty cannot stand the spotlight."
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when it comes to rodeo, in the Bay Area, we have a lot of Bay Area listeners and viewers. There it is, DawnWatch on screen, and you can go there, DawnWatch.com, and subscribe. But in the Bay Area, there was some coverage about rodeo because they were trying to, as you're well aware, change some of the events associated with rodeo. They were trying to change some of the aspects of that specific rodeo. It was in the East Bay, as I recall. So it was like maybe the Oakland City Council or Alameda City Council that met. And I'm wondering if you feel like, is that the way? I mean, that's the way a groundswell grows, right? I mean, even though there's this thing and it means a lot of money for people, so that's likely not going to go away, there can be changes within it.
Right. And so that is, I think, in my opinion, one of the ways that effective activism happens. So we need people who are just saying, I mean, I am an animal rights activist, and I'm also an animal welfare activist. I mean, it's very, very important, all the little steps we take. If we would, if a human were in jail and we'd want them to get better treatment, well, if an animal's in jail, we'd want them to get better treatment too. It doesn't, I think you know what I'm trying to say there. So whereas I might say, look, rodeo sucks because it's all about using members of another species for our entertainment, and those animals do not want to be there. They want to be out in the field, munching grass and relaxing. Not everybody's going to agree with me on that immediately, and other animal rights activists. But most people will agree that calf roping is disgusting. And that's when you take a little baby calf, basically a puppy, and you're pushing them out into this arena, and they've got men on horses chasing them with lassos. And as they're racing, they're supposed to lasso the calf. And again, if you go to Shark, the showing animals, animals respect and kindness videos, you'll see these little calves being yanked off their feet by their necks, slammed on the ground. Sometimes their necks get broken. And so that's the sort of event that in Oakland they were trying to prevent. And then there's another one, it's just too horrible to believe, which is the wild cow milking competitions, where they're not wild cows, they're domesticated cows, and they're being terrified and chased with cowboys trying to grab their bovine breasts and milk them on the spot. And the point of going after those particular events is, honestly, if we can't agree on just the most egregious cruelty, then we really don't have much hope as a species, and much hope of eventually getting to the place that I would like people to get at, which is that animals really have a right to live their own lives.
Well,
let's just start with what everybody can agree on.
Yeah, and I think that's a really a good point, that if you look at what it actually is beyond just rodeo, you look at the actual events, then slowly you begin to focus on, okay, I always say there's a spectrum of cruelty, because people ask, well, if you're a vegan, would you have one of the eggs from my chicken that is left in the yard? It's just sitting there. I didn't, force the chicken in any cage or anything like that. And I always talk about, well, there's a breadth of cruelty, even when it comes to the most cruel. I mean, that there's no cruelty associated with that, which I just gave you an example of. But what I think in the case of rodeo, so now go to all the way back, in rodeo, there are degrees of horror within rodeo. I mean, some are worse than others. And so, again, somebody pointed this out in the chat, most people who are going to rodeo are not receiving this message, but that doesn't matter. There can be a groundswell for change that's associated with a different community, but part of the broader community. And if that push for change is great enough, there will be change. I don't care if the people who go to rodeo want it or not. They will take away some of these most horrible events, and they'll just leave the less horrible events that are still horrible. So, again, I come at it from, I wish they would go away, but I do believe that change is indeed possible.
The people who are big fans of rodeo, though, the reason they will fight tooth and nail not to have those couple of events taken away, though, is they'll talk about the slippery slope. And they are right to talk about the slippery slope, because when you focus the spotlight on events like calf roping, and you get people over to the Shark website to look at calf roping, or to, you were talking about the Bay Area, Eric Mills is the most wonderful anti-rodeo activist. And there's a film online called Bucking Tradition, 8 minutes long. It'll tell you everything you need to know about rodeo. And if you get people just to look at these one or two events, well, they can't help but start to look at some of the other events as well. And none of it's very good. So I don't blame the rodeo folks for fighting
for holding the line. Yeah. There it is. Huge in Japan, chip away at the most horrible, and eventually everything is gone. So there it is. And thanks to Karen Dawn for your efforts. I want, maybe in our next conversation, which we will have, I'd love to have you return. And I wonder maybe if you can just give me a state of the state in a broad way I wanted to talk about this another area where I feel as though there has been a lot of great progress made, and there has been an awareness and an awakening, and that is in the treatment of marine mammals that are put in tanks for entertainment. You know, I think we look at the orcas and we look at the entrapment of these creatures and how they're left to, you know, almost starve so that they'll perform tricks for these dead fish, and they swim around in this bathtub all day. I think we now look at that with kind of in the way that I've just described it. I wonder if you could tell me, don't you feel as though some real improvements have been made in that area?
The real improvements that have been made are in awareness. Blackfish did that. It was the breakthrough. It's funny because The Cove came along first and it got the Oscar, but not all that many people saw it. And that's why, again, what DawnWatch does is tries to get things out to mainstream media because people saw Blackfish and they got it. So in awareness, real improvements have been made. And Lolita, who's been swimming in a fracking tank in Florida for the last 50 years, really looks like she might be returned to the waters that she was kidnapped from with her family slaughtered in front of her. But one of the more recent stories is that we have SeaWorld sorts of places opening up in Asia at the moment with no orcas, yay, but just as many dolphins. And dolphins are just as sentient as orcas are, and they suffer very similarly in those environments. So when it comes to actual practical change, the amount of suffering, are we there? Maybe not, but are we close? Are we reaching? I think every activist should read the book, The Tipping Point, Malcolm Gladwell's The Tipping Point. And what has happened with marine mammals is we're right at it. We're really getting to the place where people are understanding this just isn't right. And we're going to, I think, come to the point where we say no more.
Well, with that, we say farewell, but we encourage people to grab your newsletter, DawnWatch.com. I get it, and I don't always send you a note back to say that, you know, I'm reading it or I love this, but I do every week. It's just terrific. So thank you so much.
I want to say my website needs updating so badly. So if they go to alerts, they haven't been updated to a while, but if they go to subscribe, they will get the most recent alerts.
Go to subscribe and support Karen Dawn, DawnWatch. Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for
good stuff. Thanks, Karen. We'll talk again. Darren, Karen Dawn, everybody. Nice job. Nice job. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.